We are Penal Reform International, and in 30 years of existence we have always worked in Europe. Yet we are a global organisation that currently has offices in Amman, in Bishkek, in Kampala, in London, in Nur Sultan, in Tbilisi, and we have colleagues working in Burkina Faso, in Central African Republic, and in Yemen. We used to have offices in Budapest, in Bucharest, and in Warsaw. Now, after 30 years of existence, we're relaunching our Europe programme and we are reinforcing our presence in The Hague. The outbreak of the coronavirus really showed us how weak criminal justice systems are also within Europe. At the same time, within Europe, prisons are often overcrowded and health needs of people who are in prison are often not met. The outbreak of coronavirus showed us exactly this and showed us the weakness of prisons in Europe. In December 2019, just before COVID-19 hit Europe, the European Union Council published conclusions on the need to reinforce alternatives to custodial sentences within the European Union member states. And the Council really underlined that although there is a broad consensus that detention should only be used as a last resort, alternatives are still underused. The Council also underlined that alternative measures can better promote social reintegration and rehabilitation. And the Council underlined that it is now proven that alternatives to custodial sentences can also reduce reoffending. And the Council called for action to be taken at the national level to develop alternatives. The outbreak of COVID-19 showed us that these overcrowded prisons present a risk to health, an additional risk to health, I should say, for people in prison in Europe. Alternatives are an answer. So we believe that with these conclusions of the European Council and with the need to urgently have a response to COVID-19 and the risks posed to the physical health of people in prison, but also the long-term risks to mental health of people in prison, we believe that all of this together provides us momentum now to start working in Europe again. Yet, these challenges are not the only ones that are being faced in European countries. We need to design and to promote women-specific criminal justice systems within Europe. Too often, the pathway to crime and the specificities of women are not taken into account enough by criminal justice actors at sentencing level and even before and obviously thereafter. So the whole chain of the criminal justice system needs to be designed more woman-friendly and have a gender sensitivity built into the system. We also need to challenge the tendency within European countries to have longer and longer sentences, which is also true in my home country, Switzerland, and even in many countries to impose life imprisonment as a sentence to more and more cases and for more and more crimes. This is really a reality that is challenging what the European Court of Human Rights called the right to hope for every single person who is in prison. We need to, within the European context, respond to discrimination in law and in practice against ethnic and religious minorities in contact with criminal justice systems, as well as foreign nationals, stateless persons, or simply people that don't have a proof of identity and are confronted to the criminal justice system. Finally, we also need to be providing guidance to justice actors in the use of technology, IT, and artificial intelligence, which is developing very fastly in the European context. And they might have a very positive impact, but they might also have a harmful impact on the enjoyment of human rights of people in the criminal justice systems. And these uses of technology really have a link with alternatives and with how we develop alternatives in the European context. All of that to say, and possibly much more can be done, all of that to say that we look forward to developing this Europe program with friends of PRI across Europe, great colleagues across Europe, and we thank them for helping us with this new challenge for Penal Reform International.
Prison conditions reveal a lot about society. In a democratic country, a person must never be tortured or held in inhuman conditions, whatever crime they may have committed. Many people must spend months in detention before it turns out that they did not commit any crime. Hundreds of people are currently detained in Hungarian prisons for simple petty offences like being unable to pay a fine. In the past decade, Hungarian prisons became gravely overcrowded and prison conditions in general did not meet international standards. This is why the Hungarian Helsinki Committee turned to the European Court of Human Rights, which echoed our concerns in its judgment. One of the stated goals of incarceration is deterrence and crime prevention, but it is equally important to ensure that those being released from prison are able to reintegrate into society by finding a job and dignified subsistence. However, years spent in overcrowded and depressing prison conditions often produce the opposite effect. This is why we have worked for decades to ensure fair, rule-abiding law enforcement, fair criminal proceedings, and human prison conditions. Maintaining contact with loved ones is an essential part of reintegration, which is why we are fighting for reasonable telephone tariffs and a transparent system of visitation. Being deprived of liberty should not mean being cut off from family.
Portugal's tradition of a humanist criminal justice is something we can be proud of. Portugal was among the first countries in the world to abolish both the death penalty and life imprisonment back in the 19th century. Today, the most severe sentence is imprisonment up to 25 years. Our penal code provides for a generous range of alternative sentences, with the aim of keeping imprisonment a punishment of last resort. All our penitentiary laws have been progressive as well, and based on rehabilitation as the main goal of imprisonment. We can say that our penal system is in line with what we call the European principles of criminal policy. However, there's still much room for improvement. Our main problem seems to always have been, a gap between the law in books and the law in practice. In fact, despite our progressive legislation and scholarship, the prison population rate remains high, and so does the average length of imprisonment compared to European figures. And pre-trial detention is still too easily imposed. All this in clear contrast with the fact that Portugal is among the safest countries in the world with low criminality rates. Detention conditions are also a problem in many prisons, and opportunities for true rehabilitation remain insufficient. The system has also shown reluctance to the penetration of restorative justice mechanisms, despite their incredible potential. To conclude, I would say that so far, the Portuguese criminal law has remained relatively immune to penal populism, much due to the humanist stand of legal scholarship in Portuguese academia. But we need to remain vigilant, not to betray this heritage.
When a person is sent to prison, the state accepts the responsibility for their well-being, including their physical and mental health, safety and education. Given the essential social role of the penitentiary institution, the basis of a well-run prison system is dependent on the concept and efforts towards the treatment of the detainees in compliance with international standards. Addressing issues related to prison overcrowding, mitigating its consequences, making the rehabilitation process more efficient are among the main challenges of any prison system, and in this context, Romanian penitentiary administration is not an exception. Even more, current challenges related to COVID-19 pandemics that we all have to face nowadays stress out these imperatives so much more within the coordinates of any prison administration. It is well acknowledged that Penal Reform International argued and supported on a constant basis the imperative of the custody and assistance of detainees aligned to the human rights, international and European standards, and promoted best practices valuable for the correctional field. Throughout its projects, PRI has fully demonstrated the added value brought in supporting the development of policies, programs for relevant dimensions of a prison system by providing advice at policy level as well as for strengthening institutional capacity. From the regional perspective, the portfolio of activities run along the years by the offices that were operational in Budapest, Warsaw and Bucharest had the potential of being even more disseminated between the specialists working in the Romanian correctional field.
There are 40 life prisoners in the Netherlands, and they serve their sentences amidst other prisoners in normal prisons. And these conditions are okay. So far there's no problem. The problem is that these life prisoners do not have a real prospect of release. I will explain it. The Dutch procedure for release of life prisoners is the pardon procedure. It is an administrative procedure and it is governed by the government, and pardon is granted by one of the ministers from this government. With the government's policy, which is based on safety first and justice second, this is a worst kind of procedure for lifers. Whatever a lifer does or whatever progress he makes, he can never atone for his offense. Life means life. It is a populistic policy which is based on the feelings of relatives and on the alleged opinion of the public. Since such a policy does violate Article 3 of the Convention of Human Rights, the government rearranged the pardon policy slightly in 2017. It introduced a board of experts that advises the minister about possible reintegration after a lifer served 25 years. Now it turns out that the personal opinion of the minister overrules the well-motivated advice of the experts. Not once since the introduction of the board, the minister followed a positive advice of the experts. At the moment, therefore, there are many national procedures against the state. And as far as I know, there are also at least 3 applications lodged at the European Court for Human Rights. Forum Levenslang also tries to draw the attention of the Committee of Ministers to the Dutch situation. We hope these procedures one day will force the government to change the law, so that in the future a specialized judge can put an end to the execution of a life sentence that no longer can be justified on legitimate penological grounds. But it is still a long way to go.
La Suisse connaît un système dualiste de sanctions pénales qui permet le prononcé simultané d'une peine au sens classique du terme, mais aussi d'une mesure pénale. Les mesures pénales sont prononcées par le juge sur recommandation d'un expert psychiatre. Elles visent à protéger la société contre la dangerosité des personnes condamnées et permettent possiblement de maintenir en détention à vie des personnes qui ont commis de simples délits, par exemple condamnées à quelques mois ou quelques années de prison, au seul motif de leur potentielle dangerosité dans l'hypothèse où ils seraient libérés. Tout rapport entre la durée de la peine, de quelques mois ou quelques années, comme je vous le disais, et donc tout rapport en lien avec la faute commise, est exclu pour ne se fonder que sur le seul critère de la dangerosité de la personne condamnée pour évaluer de sa libération dans le cadre de l'exécution de sa sanction pénale. Ce système présente de nombreux points discutables comme l'absence concrète de droit à obtenir une contre-expertise, le déroulement de l'expertise judiciaire dans le cadre de la procédure pénale. Elle présente également des difficultés et soulève de nombreuses questions quant aux établissements dans lesquels les personnes condamnées exécutent ces mesures qui devraient être des établissements médicaux, mais qui dans la pratique, nous le savons, sont le plus souvent des prisons au sens tout à fait classique du terme, dans lesquelles ces personnes qui potentiellement risquent la détention à vie doivent recevoir des soins qu'elles ne peuvent pas avoir en prison.
Around 1.7 million people are under the supervision of probation services across the 36 Council of Europe member states. However, we do see that there are disparities in sentencing and also in the implementation of alternatives to imprisonment for certain groups in our societies, people that are belonging to minority groups and also those who may be more vulnerable. So as part of our work in Europe, we are going to be looking at practically overcoming these challenges by working with probation agencies in 2 countries to pilot either new or improve alternatives to imprisonment to ensure that the specific circumstances, needs and human rights of people who are vulnerable or belonging to minority groups can be better taken into account. The tools and lessons learned from these pilot projects will then be able to promote and assist in reform in other European countries.